Welcome to GydeBites. I'm your host Prasanna Vaidya. Every organization builds learning in its own way. Everyone has their preferences, everyone has their choices, everyone has their tests, and so on. But if you pause and reflect, the real key question is what lessons stand out? What works for learning at a large scale? And in today's episode, we'll take a look at these things and we'll explore these lessons and insights with Allison Sadler. She is a head of global learning at Airbnb. With over 25 years of experience she has in learning and people development, Allison combines research and practice to shape strategies that drive impact across global orgs. And she also has a PhD in human capital. She's the author of Ripples of Leadership, where she shares powerful lessons on building learning that scales worldwide. Alison, welcome to GydeBites, and I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. So, Alison, let's take it from the top. What challenges do you feel as you're serving one of the probably largest global service organizations? What challenges you see for building the learning strategy?
So I don't think that we are uncommon despite size, controlling for all sorts of variables. I think the world itself is coming to an era where the pacing of what people need to know and when they need to know it and how long that particular bite, no pun intended, lasts, is drastically shortened. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think when I was growing up, the amount of information you needed to memorize would help you walk out of a classroom being the smartest person. And if you knew about history or you knew about math and you memorized all these things, that made you a smart person or a capable person with the right skills. And I think that has fundamentally changed in our environment. So the smartest person in the room doesn't necessarily need to memorize everything. They need to know where to get their information. They need to be efficient with their tools. And I think that is really the name of the game for learning, right? Because all learning is offsetting the forgetting curve. And so if we can offset the forgetting curve with technology, we're in a much better place to get the information we need at that particular moment for whatever task, meeting, or strategic session we're about to have. So I don't think that makes us unique. I think that is a pervasive issue just in the era we all find ourselves in. And so we have some new challenges of pacing and agility, but being large and global, whether you are as large or larger, means that you have to understand how you can get things out at scale in an agile way, rather than the old days of spending days, weeks, months in the classroom, which I did when I started with American Express many moons ago. I spent months with a binder, and that will not serve us well now or in the future. So those, I think, are the new challenges for learning executives and professionals.
Yeah, and totally makes sense, right? When everyone is sort of has a memory span of 30 seconds for YouTube shorts or Instagram reels, and then it becomes a challenge if you say that, hey, I'm going to conduct a 3-hour session for you guys or you girls, and so on. So that's you put it very rightly there. One thing I wanted to sort of touch base on next was how do you make sure that there is this global consistency while you are delivering this learning stuff at a scale, but at the same time, there is a need for local customizations, maybe because of languages, maybe because of the way how regulatory environment in that particular country operates and so on and so forth. So how do you balance those two things, the consistency globally as well as customizations at local levels?
So I think you have to scale with intent. So what are you scaling for everybody? So that would be your first level or your primary level. And then how can you construct that level with the deliberation to customize or take a deeper dive or a more surface level dive, depending on language, region, skills, functions, etc. And so if you start with the end in mind, knowing that you will have some variations, and I think it comes down to understanding your agent, your end user, your learner, whoever that may be in your organization, you can then start with that particular learner centric mindset first and construct your first level, knowing that you then need to break it down into more bite-sized chunks that really can be better consumed at a local region function level. So I think it takes several, primary, secondary, tertiary levels of thinking to be able to construct something that is scale and then build on that to customize for whatever situation you find yourselves in. It's almost like sailing, where you start your boat with a mast and you adjust the winds, adjust to the winds, knowing that the way you started out in the direction you're planning, that will shift. And so shift with it, move your sails, but understand you have tools and things at your disposal to be able to do that. But if you're not thinking about that when you start out, then you simply continue to sail in the same direction, often meeting with friction and resistance. And what we want with learning, again, to offset that forgetting curve, is less friction, less resistance once we've mastered our skills and gotten where we needed to be as a learner.
Wow, I love that example of sort of sail with the wind and how it flows. That's very natural way of looking at things. Very aptly put, Alison. I want to also come back a little bit about the use of technology, right? Because a lot of that you have mentioned is in today's world, it can be enabled or it can be distributed via technology. So how do you feel technology supports these inclusive learning programs and that are scalable across geographies, diverse teams, and so on?
Yeah. I've said this as well. It's a beautiful time to be in learning.
Yeah.
Technology has come such a long way, and I think it will continue to get even better, even more customizable. So there's really a few areas. I'll start with one. The ability to create AI learning paths in many of the LXP platforms, learning experience platforms, really allows us as learning professionals to say, this particular individual needs these three things, or using that and leveraging that with other technology that says, you've mastered these skills, but we're showing that you're struggling on your calls, cases, work, units on these three skills. And so we're automatically going to push those to you. And in some cases, push them to you when we see that you have available time or capacity, so that a manager isn't dependent on waiting on that opportunity, and it just happens organically in the flow of work. So I think that that's one. So an LXP that has AI-enabled technology, there are many that are in flight or in beta, and they're very good. And I think they will get even better and more bespoke to the learner. But it's a great time to be in learning because you have the ability to not have to look at a population. I'll just be generic here, of 10,000 people and say, this 50 needs XYZ. This 50 needs ABC. There are algorithms and AI that will help us do that without having someone to go look at all of that.
Wow.
It happens faster, much more organically, and in the flow of work, which is wonderful. I am also a big fan of AI simulations where frontline agents, workers, even leaders really have the ability to practice conversations, work units, work through problem solving with the use of AI bots and AI algorithms that let them know very, very quickly and in the moment whether or not they have mastery of a soft skill, of a binary item. Did you do this correctly or did you not? And so it's a wonderful opportunity for new learners, as we've all been and continue to be, to gain confidence in a safe space, to themselves really understand in a safe environment, I made a mistake without feeling embarrassed, and to be allowed to process that mistake, which is huge. So a lot of the research coming out now talks about the ability for the brain to take a pause and process what's being learned. And in our old paradigms and environments, we ran through content, one module after the other, quizzes, tests, but not really having the deliberate pauses, and processes so that people could actually understand cognitively what's happening and how they're going to digest and apply that. So using AI bots, allowing them to process and giving them the confidence in a safe space to practice, I think is really critical for building those early skills and doing them much more quickly than what we know to be passive lecturing, where I'm only retaining 5-10% because I'm not allowed to do all those other things we just talked about.
Yeah, and one of the, it's an excellent point. One of the additional bit that I want to add in is also people sort of fear that if I do something, if I make any mistakes, people will judge me. And that judgment part is also taken care of it because we know that it's an AI bot. So I can make mistakes and it will not still judge me, hopefully.
100%. There is, in many cultures, there is an association with shame for getting things wrong or not understanding. And there is an environment now where we can take that layer and allow all of the cognitive horsepower to really come to bear without the layering and actually pulling back of learning because they're emotionally ashamed of their mistake. And so it really just allows you to learn faster without having some of those elements at play. And then I think the third thing that you touched upon is really the tools that are coming of age, for lack of a better term, with localization, translation. They are not perfect, but I'm excited to see what's on the market and how that is maturing to allow us to be able to localize and translate more quickly, and provide things in multiple languages in a simultaneity type of environment.
That was awesome, Alison. I wanted to touch base on one thing where what one approach you have seen that it has made impact across either at your current workplace or your previous workplace. So what is that one thing which you would say that it has made a lot of impact as a L&D leader for you?
I'll go back to the AI simulations. No secret, I'm a fan of them. I do think that it helps our learners get better faster, gain more confidence, gain more repetition. All of the things we know help accelerate learning and offset forgetting so that they can be more effective more quickly. And I think that it's not just AI, so there's not one strategy or one smoking gun. It is the right placing the AIs and the simulations and practice. Even if you don't have AI, find some way for your learners to practice what's happening in a safe space or safe environment, or observe that at a minimum where that's happening. But sequencing that in the right places, so planting your content in the beginning so they have psychological priming of what they're about to practice and lay that foundation, allow them to practice it, and then allow them to actually do it live. Like that particular combination and pillars are going to be really effective for helping people to accelerate their learning. So it's not just the one piece of technology. I'm not a fan of just saying a substitute technology at the expense of all others, but really use it as a lever and a strategic tool at the right place and time with the learning, right? And then afterwards, allow people to process what they did well. Again, more research is about self-testing and really realizing on your own, not necessarily in a quiz or a standardized testing environment, where you're strong and where you still have opportunities to learn and close your gaps, whether that's in knowledge or skills. So being able to do that in a way with an AI bot really helps that process of self-testing and filling in those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, technology has been an enabler, right? So it enables a lot of more things for us to do. Allison, we are coming to the last conversation that we want to have today. I would like to know what key lessons you would like to share with L&D leaders who are taking global responsibilities like you have. So do you have any sort of uh, key lessons or key things that they should focus on?
So the pacing and the agility, thinking about how you structure the pace of change in your own environment. And that is bespoke to everyone because it's different in every organization. Really understanding who your learner is. And I don't mean like, what is their job? I mean, who is sitting in the seat? Is it people who are early in their careers, people who are returning in their careers, people who have some skills or are building those skills? So understanding who that is and envisioning what it's like to be that individual and having to do the job really puts you at the center of the learner. And I think that that is incredibly important. And then I also think that as the environment changes, as I spoke of at the top of the session, we know that the attention span of the adult learner is continuing to shrink. And depending on the generation, you'll see some numbers, but all of them are very small. I haven't seen a number over 10 minutes of attention span. I think most of it's around 7. Some of the newer generations are 3 minutes. And so how do you build content for complex, globally scaled organizations, knowing that you have the attention span of a 3-minute, 7-minute, or 10-minute learner, whatever figure you want to anchor on, they're all very small. And so how do you do that effectively? How do you plant things in these bite-sized chunks that resonate and then come back to them again and again so that you really capture the repetition and you offset that forgetting curve, right? So I think being aware of what technology is available to help you scale, to help you pace in an agile way, but also to help you capture a very shrinking attention economy of all generations. And then last but not least, being very learner centric down to the job, the region, the language, the individual that is coming to your table as the user or learner in your story.
Yeah. So listen, one more question, right? So do you see this attention span being a challenge? That reducing attention span being a challenge or an opportunity?
I think that you can look at it as a double-edged sword. So I personally, as a learning executive, think of it as a challenge. How can I do this in a way that meets people where they are versus using old paradigms, models that aren't really helpful in this environment anymore? So that's the challenge. I also think that if we allow people to be disparate and have divergent attention, we are going to increase the forgetting curve. So we know that people's attention is everywhere. How do we help create a classroom environment that allows people to focus, process, and then give them information in the chunks that they are used to? I dare say TikTok style or Reels, YouTubes, whatever we want to call them. But, again, going back to when I was learning, I learned from a book and I learned from lecture. Now we have so many more tools at our disposal that it doesn't take as long to read a full chapter as it does to watch a video about it. Or listen to a podcast on the way to work and really absorb knowledge that way. So I think it is a double-edged sword. It is something we have to contend with that isn't going away. In fact, it will only be exacerbated as the pace and technology of things changes. And we have more technology at our disposal. But it also is a great call and challenge to learning professionals to say, how can we meet people where they are with the technology that we have and the attention that we know they can keep?
Yeah, yeah. That on a lighter note, that's why we named our episode GydeBites, so that we can cover a lot of things in, let's say, 15-20 minutes of episodes. Alison, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your journey, and key insights with us today. I hope our listeners will be very they can take away a lot of things that you have spoke about and implement at their workplace, to be honest.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much once again, Alison, and to our listeners, right? So if you find this valuable, please share with your colleagues, friends, and your network. Until next time, keep learning, keep evolving, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.